Is much better.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. Brian, it's week 2, and once again, we are live on Sunday morning. We will, be answering people's fantasy questions, betting questions, getting everyone set for week 2. But before we dive into all that, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. I have been anticipating this day all week. It's like Christmas all over again. I don't think any week is any more exciting than the previous one, and I'm just so happy that football's back.
Yeah. Week 2 sets up a lot more interesting, I think, in terms of we had so much time to digest week 1 and get strong feelings, and obviously we were coming into the season with a lot of expectations and a lot of what we built in a lot of stuff over the offseason. And then obviously over 1 week, we were able to see what happens. Now we're in week 2. Now we're, dealing with injuries and issues, and we'll talk about a bunch of that stuff. But from in terms of off the top, in terms of from a fantasy perspective, is there a matchup or two that you're really paying attention to today?
I mean, I'm going to stick where my boys, the Cowboys, in that game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys, which has the highest over-under of the week. It's anticipated as being, just another shootout for the Falcons. The Cowboys are looking to rebound after disappointing in LA last weekend. It'll be interesting to see what Dallas is able to do against kind of a porous Falcons defense, even probably without yet another offensive lineman in Tyron Smith, who he might be missing today. I know that they are going to have fans there today, somewhere in the range of around 20,000. So
yeah, I heard they can have up to 50%. Is that already, or is that coming up?
Hey man, it is Texas. Who the hell knows? And real quick, before we even go any further, we already have a question, and it's somebody pertaining to this game. Are you playing Deontay Johnson or CeeDee Lamb? I think. What is your take on that, Kyle? I know where I'm going.
So let's talk about that, because I think this game is incredibly interesting. Obviously, no Blake Jarwin. Obviously, Atlanta secondary that has been torched early and often. We saw last year how big of a mess they were. They sort of seemed to figure it out, and then Russ in week 1 completely dismantled that. Week 1 was, I guess, a bit of an eye-opener in terms of CeeDee Lamb. I expected him to be really good. I still think he could be, I think he has elite upside. But he also I wasn't sure, with the shorter off season, how involved he would be. And I'm pulling up his log. Yeah, 6 targets, 5 for 59. Amari Cooper, we'll see. He's already banged up. It's only week 2. If I had to, I think, again, if we had to play one of these guys, Michael Gallup would be my favorite option of the 3. That being said, Pittsburgh impressed the hell out of me last week. Big Ben looked good, and I think Deontay Johnson, despite not quite living up to maybe what we wanted him to do, had a still solid game, was really, really involved. If I had to start one, man, that's tough. It's probably Lamb, but it's really close.
See, I think for me, it kind of depends on the situation of my roster construction. Mm-hmm. If I need a home run play, I think Lamb kind of fits that mold as a guy who we see his depth of target was upwards of 20 yards down the field for Dak. He has that game-breaking ability. Whereas Deontay Johnson, he saw a lot of, close to the cuff kind of passes by Ben Roethlisberger, lots of outs, lots of comebacks. I do think that Pittsburgh is in control of this game today, and, which may kind of keep the passing down a little bit for the Steelers. And when you look at the Cowboys, they were tops in the NFL in pace of play last week. So if you have a couple studs, I think you're good going Deontay Johnson. But if you're in need of that guy who's going to get you that 4 catches for 100 and something and a touch, I would lean Lamb in this situation against the Falcons.
Yeah, no, I like that call quite a bit. Yeah, like if you're shooting for upside, if you need a guy who could potentially get you 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, Lamb's that guy, but he could also get you 3 for 30. Because like I said, I expect Gallup. Gallup had a kind of a frustrating week 1, and I think that changes this week, especially if Amari's out. And I am curious to see, like, Seattle is a team that leans so much on the running game, and for them to not really be involved, like that was passing. Even Chris Carson, who had 2 touchdowns, were via the pass. Like, is it maybe Atlanta's just more stout up the middle, and Seattle couldn't find the room, or maybe everybody's like, oh, Seattle runs, so they're going to come out in week 1 and kind of give people a different look and see how they react. And obviously, it worked out really well. The one thing I will say about that game is, we were kind of talking about a little bit before. We both like Dallas, but I would say if you are kind of keep an eye on that game, get ready for the Falcons to be down like 2 touchdowns, and then just take Atlanta to whatever plus whatever, because they're going to come back and they're going to make the score look a lot better at the end, but they're never really going to be in the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, okay, so we kind of have a follow-up here. He's letting us know that his other wide receiver is Calvin Ridley. This person would be replacing Chris Godwin. Well, so Ridley's going to be in there, and I do think because like you're pertaining to with this particular game, we're going to see Atlanta trailing, so they're going to see a ton of passing. So Ridley's going to get his. So in that case, I think I would probably go Deontay Johnson, just because you're probably going to get 5 or 6 receptions. A floor of about 50 to 60 yards. And, if you pair that with the kind of game that Ridley could potentially put up, I think you're in a good spot.
Yep. No, I'm 100% with you. There's one other game that was really interesting to me. I'm trying to find it on. My brain has gone dead this morning. I
know for me, real quick, as you're looking, I think the second most exciting game to me has got to be Tom Brady's home debut.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what they're able to do against that Carolina defense who got torched by the Raiders. And it's also, too, are we going to see Tampa Bay lean on the running game, or are we going to see Tom Brady come in and air it out, even minus Chris Godwin, and see if he's able to kind of dink and dunk his way down the field and take those deep shots with Mike Evans?
Yeah. That was the thing we were talking about is with the Steelers too. AJ Boye is out this week. Like, I watched that game against the Titans very closely. Their secondary is actually pretty good, despite not having Von Miller. But now they're going to be down AJ Boye. Obviously, Miller's out. So I think there's gonna be more opportunities in that secondary to kind of take advantage. Let's talk Lions Packers, because there's a couple things in there that I want to dive into. First, from a Lions perspective, obviously we were huge on Matthew Stafford, but the lack of Kenny Golladay, is that like, should we be a lot more open to the idea of potentially streaming other options and even as soon as now because of no Kenny Golladay, or should we be like, they still have Marvin Jones, they still have Quintez Cephas, they still have hopefully DeAndre Swift, who can remember how he got to catch the ball. They have Hawkinson.
Yep.
In a plus matchup against Green Bay, who, even Kirk Cousins was able to throw on last week. Like, I guess, where are you at with Stafford in terms of no Golladay this week again?
So, this is a prime example of a guy who people are going to be down on because he's without his number one wide receiver. But I saw a stat earlier in the week that the Packers actually allowed the most yards per play on defense last week, even though they were able to beat the Vikings. They were giving up something like 7.6 or 7.9 yards a clip, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and coming into this game, the Lions are a touchdown dog, so we're going to be looking at them trailing pretty often and fairly for pretty much the entire amount of the game, which means Stafford's going to have to air it out. And if they could allow him even an iota of time, the likes of Danny Amendola, TJ Hawkinson, Cephas, who is a great play this week in DFS if you're looking for some super cheap value. And then you still got Marvin Jones, who's still a really good corner out there. And these guys were torched by Minnesota, or the Packers were torched by Minnesota. So I'm not sleeping on Stafford, and I'm not giving up on him just yet.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of 3 games that has a total in the 50s. So I'm a big fan of that. Like I'm looking at like, would you rather start Jared Goff at Philly or Stafford versus the Packers?
Oh, that's an easy Stafford for me.
Would you go Daniel Jones versus the Bears or Stafford at the Packers?
I'm sticking with Stafford, man. I was really high on him coming into the season, and I'm still high on him just with the volume that I think we're going to see.
Yeah,
because they're not gonna jump out to a lead like they did against Chicago.
No, definitely not. I would like to look at what the Lions team total. I'm looking at that line. I feel like it's still too high, especially because Lions blew that game late to Chicago. Gave like 21 points in the fourth quarter and still could have won it at the end if just DeAndre Swift catches the damn ball. And it's probably like a 3.5 instead of like almost 7. So that is something to keep an eye on. A lot of the reasons why I like the G-men this week at Chicago. It was really nice of New Orleans to deem Michael Thomas out for the week. On ahead of Sunday's games. I know a lot of these coaches will, finagle stuff and make it seem like there's maybe a chance they play. Obviously, it feels like we're not going to see Michael Thomas for a while. But are you potentially interested in a Traquan Smith or maybe Emmanuel Sanders gets more volume, or how do you see that game going this week and kind of while Thomas is out?
So, coming into drafts, Emmanuel Sanders, he was kind of one of those guys that we were selecting as, a 2A option, kind of thinking that he was going to see an increase in volume there with the Saints. And it didn't really come to fruition in week 1. But I do think, minus Michael Thomas, I do think he sees a volume bump. And if I have him, you drafted him in the mid, 6th, 7th, 8th rounds, you got to play him. But guy like Traquan Smith, I'm not putting any trust in him, who he's never really panned out. For every time we think he's going to have a huge game, he sucks. I think this is a extremely heavy Jared Cook, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray game plan. I see them using Kamara a lot more as a wide receiver. Latavius Murray kind of pounding the rock up the middle. And, I think Kamara is upwards of 7-8 receptions this week. So yeah, I'm not super high on any other options than Sanders on the outside for the Saints.
All right, we have some info rolling in. Tyron Smith is officially out for week 2. Does that hamper and does that change anything you think about Dallas?
So the one thing I will say about that is I do think this kind of lends more towards another Amari Cooper game. Just with how good of a route runner he is, and he creates so much space at contact against corners. It really doesn't downgrade Dak or any of the position players for me that much. Just seeing how porous that Atlanta defense was, I just don't think that they're going to be able to stop this Cowboys offense, who averages over 32 points a game at home over the last year. So it's not that big of a deal.
In a kind of a, I guess I'm still a little surprised. Cortland Sutton is good to go this week. He is going to be starting. And actually, if I'm a Noah Fant owner, if I have, Jerry Jeudy, I actually feel better about those guys. Like, I think, is Cortland Sutton somebody you're willing to play? Because, for me, I'm looking for other options. Obviously, if you drafted him high and you have better, if you don't really have a lot, or you're dealing with, you have Chris Godwin and Michael Thomas and all these guys out, you have to play somebody. He's got a ton of upside. I do have some concerns though, but I feel like him being out there is good for Jerry Jeudy, who impressed a lot in his first game ever against the Tennessee Titans, and I expect Jeudy to have a big game here in a game where Pittsburgh's going to be able to put up points, and I think it's going to be interesting to put some pressure on Drew Lock's shoulders this week. And if you're looking for a little bit of a GPP type stack, a little Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant combo could be incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I love your take about how the appearance of Cortland Sutton for the Broncos this week is actually better for the 2 pass catchers from last week. Just kind of like you said, Pittsburgh is I don't think we're going to see them roll in coverage his direction because I think they have confidence in all their guys back there to be able to cover their guys one-on-one. But I do think the fact that now Jerry Jeudy is going to have a little more room to roam. Noah Fant showed out last week, and I think he, again, is just – his stock is going to continue to rise as – Pittsburgh's going to be able to put a tremendous amount of pressure on Drew Lock. We're going to have to see him make some quick decisions, being Noah Fant, one of his favorite guys, and Jerry Jeudy, kind of like Amari Cooper, he's able to get open rather quickly. So I do think we see Jeudy with a lot of receptions and the ability to break a big one.
How many more points does Devin Singletary score than Zach Moss this week? That's what I want to know.
All right. Oh, man. I think Devin Singletary is the primary runner again, but to that, I still think Zach Moss is the guy in the red zone, and Zach Moss is my favorite, sleeper. Let me put $5 on a dude to score 2 touchdowns this week.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that take a couple times though, which makes me worried that it's I don't know, the Twitter fantasy bubble, it just loves themselves some Zach Moss. I'm gonna be really curious to see that game because that's another one that kind of garnered some attention for me. Obviously, the Bills are pretty sizable favorites. I'm really curious to see what's going on with Miami. Obviously, Devontae Parker comes into this game a little banged up. I like Preston Williams more than most, and I think Mike Gesicki is a lot more interesting this week. But do you think that's a game where the Bills are just going to blow them out and have a lot of rush attempts for both Moss and Singletary?
So initially, when the line first came out, I was extremely high on Buffalo -6.5, and I still think they do cover that. But as the week went on, seeing a little more of the advanced analytics that everybody's all about now, Miami was, I think, top 5 in the league in blitz pressure. They're going to bring the heat on Josh Allen, and if one thing we know about Allen is he's not the most accurate quarterback, regardless of what he was able to do last week. And if you put a lot of pressure on him and you keep him contained, you have the good opportunity to create turnovers. And where Miami's strongest is on the outside with their corners. So, I think this game is sneakily close, but I do think that Buffalo kind of, runs away with it at the end. And we all know teams struggle going down to Miami. I mean, look at what the Patriots, they consistently played poor every time they went down the South Beach. So I think this game is
to see with everything kind of shut down though, if the quote unquote Miami effect has as much of a effect.
Well, it's still going to be hotter than shit.
Yeah, but it's a lot worse when you're out till 3 a.m. the night before and you have like booze just like seeping out your pores than if you're just like got a good night's sleep because nothing's open.
Very true.
Chris Godwin's out. Scotty Miller's in. Saw 61% of the snaps in their week 1 contest where Godwin and Mike Evans played. There's a lot of buzz around him and his kind of a usage and potential, fantasy output this week. Are you in on the Scotty Miller bandwagon?
Sure. Why the hell not, man? We've seen Chris Hogan, Danny Amendola,
other white receiver.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Julian Edelman has turned into a tremendous wide receiver, all made by this guy, this 43-year-old man throwing the ball. Like he loves himself those little quick, shifty white wide receivers. So yeah, I'm all about Scotty Miller this week.
That's another one I can't get in on. I may look like an idiot, but I think it's Evans. I think it's the tight ends, whether it's OJ or Gronk. I think Gronk could actually have a touchdown here. And then I'm really curious to see what the running game situation looks like. Obviously, last week
it better be a Rojo game.
It was all Rojo, but then Bruce Arians. But we gotta. Bruce Arians is like a margarita. You just cover that whole thing in salt. But he's talking about Fournette, and I'm really curious. I feel like this might be a run the hell out of the ball game, and maybe it's. Rojo gets 17 touches and Fournette gets 8 or 9. And but I don't know. Like we both kind of like Carolina, but after that interesting game last week against the Raiders, I'm a little less positive on kind of where they're at.
Yeah, to me, I don't understand how a coach would be willing to deviate from what they did the previous week that was extremely successful, which was Ronald Jones was clearly the best back out of that backfield.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was breaking off big chunks, 5-6 yard gains, whereas Leonard Fournette, you could tell he was still, not sure of the scheme, or he was just indecisive. I don't know what it was, but he didn't look like a guy who I would be willing to thrust into a bigger role just yet. And like he said, Arian said that this is Rojo's job as long as he's playing well, and he played extremely well last week. So I think, like you said, I want to see them hand the rock to Ronald Jones, see what he can do, and if he has one of those games like it's 100+ yards, a touchdown, he catches some passes, he doesn't let Tom Brady get blasted in the backfield.
Yeah, that's going to be the most important thing.
This could lead into the situation that you and I alluded to before the season started, where maybe the Fournette signing was just kind of a just-in-case addition, and
right.
They cut bait with with minimal salary implications.
All right, Brian, let's do what we did before the season, where we talked about some guys that you should be adding now, so that way next week you're not running to the waiver wire and spending 3 times the amount on your fab. And these are a little preemptive strike. We did talk some Nyheim Hines heading into week 1, and that worked out nicely. Is there, obviously we can head to Indy, where Jack Doyle's out. Mo Alley Cox steps in. I do wonder, though, if Michael Pittman actually becomes somebody that's a little more involved. But I think both of those guys are incredibly interesting. Obviously, T.Y. is still there. Paris Campbell looked really good in week 1. But I do want to see if they run maybe a little more 3 wide receiver sets, or maybe it's just Jonathan Taylor season and we need to step out of the way of all these pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, I think all these pass catchers could become eventually relevant, because with Phillip Rivers, I really don't think they're going to maintain like an extreme heavy rush package. They're going to still want to throw the ball, and they're going to be more towards the 55-45 range. And even if it's short passing, I think a guy like Michael Pittman, who coming into the year we both kind of liked as that high ball receiver that Phillip Rivers would be able to target in the red zone, is a good preemptive strike ad, as a lot of people are going to be on Mo Alley Cox. But I mean, I know he's a former basketball player, but
yeah, I mean, he's caught touchdowns before, so he's put up points. But this is also Phillip Rivers. But Rivers has always been a tight end guy, and when they get in close, but we'll see. A couple other names. I'm really curious. There's 2 names in the Jets 49ers game that I would keep an eye on. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is somebody who's set to explode. Obviously, the Niners need someone to catch balls. Obviously, they brought in Mohamed Sanu. We'll see how that works out in his first game. But the guy that I'm really paying attention to is on the other side with Le'Veon Bell out, and obviously Frank Gore in a revenge matchup is going to probably get like 40 yards and 2 touchdowns today. But LaMichael Pirine, I'm not sure if he's going to be active today. It seemed like he was trending that way. But is a guy that I liked a lot coming out of the University of Florida. And I think he has a legit shot at making some noise. Yeah,
so Pirine is active.
Nice.
I'm glad you started talking about the Jets here, because Pirine I think is a great preemptive strike ad here, because we don't know what we're going to see with Le'Veon Bell coming forward. We've already seen him hold out for an entire season with Pittsburgh because he was unhappy. How much of his hamstring injury is actually him and the Jets just not being able to get along? Because we know that there's been a feud between he and Adam Gase. Is it possible that we see the Jets try to ship him off prior to the trade deadline and just get him the hell out of there, leaving Pirine as the heir apparent? Yeah. I think there's a good possibility that actually happens. And regardless if Le'Veon Bell comes back and is still the starter, you're still looking at a dude who, I mean, he's going to miss 3 weeks guaranteed. First game back, there's no way you're just going to put him in your lineup. And there's no way that the Jets are just going to trust him to put him in their lineup. What if Pirine blows up?
Yeah. I mean, he could totally go off.
Another guy I wanted to say, he's probably owned in your leagues, but if he's not, and you have like a back end bench stash, or you're in a keeper league, I think right now is a great time to grab Tua Tagovailoa.
Mm-hmm.
If we see another crappy performance out of Ryan Fitzpatrick, they're 0-2. I think Miami has the weapons to be able to, have a fantasy relevant quarterback to a certain degree. Miami gets Jacksonville next Thursday, which I think could be an extremely interesting matchup if Tagovailoa is thrust into the starting role. If Devontae Parker doesn't have any setbacks this week, Preston Williams is back, Mike Gesicki is there. They got a three-headed monster in the backfield, which is not good for fantasy purposes, so you want to avoid that situation. But I think Tagovailoa offers a tremendous amount of upside, especially in the matchup against Jacksonville, if he is to become the starter.
Yeah, no, I think we're on to a time, and I think Justin Herbert seeing the field is something that, especially if this week goes really bad against Kansas City, we've already kind of had our little debate about what that situation may look like and how that game may play out. But I am really interested in the game against the Jets, how well the Niners can run the football. Obviously, George Kittle is huge for what they do for blocking. No Weston Richburg up the middle. They're bringing up other guys to kind of fill that spot. Center is so important. Not having your elite blocking tight end. I want to see, it's the Jets, and that we know we can make all the Jets jokes we want, but they do have some decent pieces, and maybe it just makes it a little bit harder, to run the rock this week.
Yeah, this was a situation. It was exactly the reason why I like Jimmy G, even without George Kittle and Debo. I think the addition of Brandon Ayuk, we don't know what we're going to see out of Mohamed Sanu, but I think we see a lot of passing to the running backs because the room to run against the Jets is going to be minimal. Buffalo's success last week came with Josh Allen running the ball. It wasn't necessarily the running backs. So as much as San Francisco wants to be able to run, I think we see a lot more passing out of them to be able to move the ball down the field consistently. We see a lot of play actions, which the Jets have a lot of youngsters back there, which are very susceptible to those kind of plays. And yeah, I'm not afraid of the San Francisco running backs at all. And I do think that all three make for interesting possible flex plays for the potential of them running up, getting up big, and then they're consistently rotating those guys in and out.
Yeah, that's another thing I'm curious about is, Jerick McKinnon was involved a ton last week, but that was also a game where they didn't really use Tevin Coleman because of the air quality. I think we see a lot more Tevin Coleman this week. That being said, in PPR leagues, I do have Jerick McKinnon in one or two lineups, and curious to see how that goes. Obviously, those are situations where I'm a little more desperate, but I think it has a stable floor, and if he finds the end zone, ends up having a really nice week.
Yeah, I think that game is extremely interesting because you see a lot of people are on the Jets defense in DFS, which I don't know if I'm too keen on. I mean, their passing defense is not great. We saw Josh Allen throw for over 3 bills, so
yeah,
I'm a little more wary about that situation, and I think San Francisco, even though the line is pretty big and it's not likely for them to cover, I do think San Francisco controls the game.
It is pretty funny how we come into a season with such distinct opinions, and then after one game, people seem to just be willing to throw them out the window. Oh, the Niners are terrible. Oh, the Jets are going to slow. Everybody loves the Jets +7. Everybody loves the Jets in terms of defense and some other DK type options. Really curious to see how that pans out. Like I said, we were kind of joking, but that's either 37-3 or 6-3. There's not a whole lot of in between.
No.
Let's head to the desert and talk about Arizona versus the Washington football team.
Good job.
DeAndre Hopkins, early, often pelted with targets. Do you think Kyler and co spread it out a little bit more this week, or do we saw that was Hopkins in Houston. He's a volume monster, and some of the concerns some of us had coming into the season were how much he would see on a week-to-week basis. Based upon week one, I don't expect him to see 17 or 18 targets, whatever he saw, but somewhere in the range of 8 to 11 seems pretty fair. Is that kind of your expectations going forward as well?
Yeah, I think the floor for Hopkins on a weekly basis now is around 9 to 10 targets at its lowest. Yeah. Just kind of seeing the way that they wanted to utilize him. He was being used in a multitude of ways, and wide receiver screens, deep patterns, short outs, short slants. Kyler Murray has found himself his new favorite target. I hate to say it for my buddy Larry Fitzgerald, but DeAndre Hopkins just adds another element to that offense, and he will be cemented into my lineups if I have him every single week, regardless of the matchup of who's opposing them.
Yeah, he's definitely matchup proof. Antonio Gibson, you think maybe we get a little more like we saw last week? Obviously, the Niners are a team that needs more help out of the running backs in the passing game. But McKinnon and Mostert were both heavily involved. Gibson is one of those guys that is super versatile, can line up in a wide range of spots. You think Washington saw some of the stuff that the Niners did and are going to try and employ similar tactics with Gibson?
If they stand a chance of keeping this game close, they better play Antonio Gibson. Yeah. Peyton Barber is he's embarrassing. 1.7 yards per carry.
Who sees 15 plus targets? Adrian Peterson or Peyton Barber or both?
Dude, yeah, it's ridiculous. So my thing is Antonio Gibson to me is another one of those under talked about guys coming into week 2 that if somebody dropped him or if you're able to get him on the low right now, I think you need to do that right now because Washington knew what they had in him, and you saw it with the way that they utilized him. Dude averaged like 7 yards a touch. He had 13 yards after contact last week, which was more than what Peyton Barber had on almost triple the amount of touches. Yeah. He was able to turn 2 negative receptions into positive yardage. He's by far their best running back. He's their best option out of the backfield catching passes. I don't give a crap what they say about J.D. McKissick. That guy's caca. Antonio Gibson is their Christian McCaffrey. He literally is their utility knife on offense. And if they have any hopes of competing this season, they're going to have to get him involved.
It's so funny because coming into the season, he was Christian McCaffrey. And then after one game, he's terrible. Let's get him out of here.
Right?
We got a question in the chat. Antonio Gibson or Scotty Miller in half PPR?
Oh, man. Well, so if you read my article over on fakepigskin.com, week 2 starter sit, I'm in love with Gibson this week. And I think the party starts in week 2 and people, realize what this guy is going to mean to this offense. So I'm going Gibson as an extreme dart throw, but if they're going to score this week, it's going to be with Gibson and McLaurin.
Yep. I'm also on the Gibson train. Well, I don't know. I feel like there's like a handful of times throughout the season where a Scotty Miller type situation pops up, and very rarely do they pan out. Usually the targets just get spread out everywhere elsewhere. And granted, he was on the field, but like there's been a lot of situations, like even last week with Fournette and Rojo, but in terms of snap share, it was pretty close, and yet in terms of touches, it was not close at all. So just because they're on the field doesn't mean, it means the coach trusts them. Obviously, the more on the field, the more potential chances you have to get targeted. But we'll see. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and in terms of that, Scotty Miller, his touchdown upside is extremely low. That's like super volatile with the likes of Gronkowski, OJ Howard, Rojo, Fournette, Mike Evans, all ahead of him and probably priority down by the red zone. Whereas Antonio Gibson, if they're having to move the ball through the air, you're looking at him and Teddy and Scary Terry and Logan Thomas, who I'm not on this week. So he's like option 3. Whereas Scotty Miller, he just has so many more people to compete with when it comes to scoring. I like Gibson with the higher upside of potentially punching it in. So that's 100%. Why I'm leaning him.
100%. Is there any highly owned, highly utilized player that you're a little pessimistic on, maybe you think is going to let people down?
I've done it before and I'm going to do it again. For me, it's Will Fuller. I wrote about him again. He's in the article, but Houston has struggled to say the least against Baltimore. And we saw what Baltimore was able to do last week, albeit against Baker Mayfield, who we can all agree on is not as good as what we thought he was going to be. but that was also against Odell Beckham Jr., who is an all-world talent no matter what he's producing on a weekly basis. I think Baltimore does – they try to take Will Fuller out of the game. Fuller has never been a model of consistency. Only like 3 times throughout his career has he ever had back-to-back games of like 90-plus receiving yards or a touchdown. This is just not the week that Fuller will bust out. I see him on a lot of DFS sites. People are like, "Oh, he's a great contrarian play." Yeah, if you want to lose, I just don't see them being able to force him the ball like they would have been able to do with the DeAndre Hopkins, who even when Hopkins played Baltimore, he was shut down to a certain degree. So I'm avoiding him.
Yeah, we just got in the chat. That was great timing by King Juice. Evans, Metcalf, Gallup, and Fuller. He has to sit one of them. As you wax poetic about how Will Fuller. I'm 100% with you. Like I'm not shy to say I don't like Will Fuller. Now that being said, his volume versus what everyone else saw last week was really impressive, and if that's something that's going to continue, he's going to be somebody that I'm going to be comfortable playing. But Evans is somebody that I'm absolutely starting, especially with Godwin. We both love Michael Gallup. I think he's going to go off this week. And when it comes to DK or Will Fuller, I wanted to talk about Russell Wilson as potentially the guy that I'm a little nervous about, but I still prefer DK over Fuller just because of the matchup. But New England's defense is really strong in the secondary. And, I do wonder how if Russ has a little bit of a come back to earth game this week. Maybe it's 2 touchdowns instead of 4. Maybe it's a couple 100 yards. Like I am a little nervous. Like I'm probably not sitting Wilson for like 80% of the names. But if you're looking from a DFS perspective, if you happen to roster 2 really good quarterbacks, I am a little nervous about of Wilson's ceiling this week.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that point. They were talking this morning on one of the pre-game shows about how Stephon Gilmore normally follows and shadows the team's like number 1 wide receiver, which in Seattle that's probably Tyler Lockett, but they move him all over the field. So I think we see Gilmore on Metcalf more often than not there, which is not a great matchup for Metcalf. But Russell Wilson's never been afraid to throw it in there for a guy. I mean, Metcalf is a huge target. He's 3 to 4 inches taller than Gilmore. I think he's still able to go up over him and catch the passes, and all it's going to take is 1 touchdown. And if say they try to move him around the field, get him in situations, try to get him away. I'm going Russell Wilson over Deshaun Watson in this, just regardless of what the game script is going to be. And for that point, I would stick with Metcalf over a Fuller.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. All right, any other?
We're agreeing way too much this morning, by the way.
What's that?
We're agreeing way too much this morning.
I know. It never works out. That is problematic. We could talk about the Giants and Bears and how the Giants are going to cover. We don't want to agree on that.
That's not going to happen.
The Bears, this line should be like a pick 'em or like
Mitchell Trubisky for MVP.
Oh, yeah, if it's the fourth quarter. The first 3.5 quarters, he was dog doo-doo. I don't know.
What?
We've talked. Like, would you play Anthony Miller over Scotty Miller? Like, if you had to pick a Miller stack?
I probably would. I kind of like Anthony Miller. I don't know why he doesn't get enough recognition there. I mean, he's a great slot receiver coming out of college. Dude was amazing. We saw him put up huge games last year, and with A-Rob taking all the attention away, he's probably going to be open more often than people think. So yeah, I like Anthony Miller this game. I think this game sneaks the over. I know it's like 44 right now. I think the over/under in the Chicago Giants game, 42.5 now. I do think we see a little more scoring than we anticipated. If Detroit was able to do what they did, imagine the Giants if they're able to get the ball into Saquon's hands. He's a big play waiting to happen.
Yep.
I think he has a better game than last week. So
yeah, and Golden Tate's back this week. They still have Shepard, who looked awesome in week 1. I think the Giants look really good. I think the Giants can win the game on the field. Carson Wentz, like, week one was a train wreck, and obviously no Lane Johnson was huge. Lane Johnson's back. Miles Sanders is back. You think that Eagles offense and Carson Wentz especially becomes somebody that you're a lot more interested in this week?
Yeah, I still like Carson Wentz for the 2020 season. I mean, he looked horrible last week, but that was against the Washington front seven that people are, if they're not privy to this yet, they are one of the best in the NFL, and not a lot of teams are going to be able to create the pressure that they are. So, I mean, the Rams have Aaron Donald, but even their D-line, I don't think it can match up with what Washington's able to put out there.
Yeah.
I like Carson Wentz. He's got his targets are coming back. Rager is going to be a week healthier. Deshaun Jackson looks healthy. He's got those 2 tight ends on the outside. He gets Miles Sanders back. Lane Johnson returns this week. We hit on this on our Thursday betting show. We both like the Eagles. The lines moved up to 1.5, so the sharps are putting their money on them too. So yeah, I like Wentz. I'm sticking with him.
Yep. Another question in the chat: Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers this week? Mahomes on the road at the Chargers. We've talked about that game a little bit and how we're kind of different. And then obviously Rodgers at home versus Detroit. If you had to start one, who would it be?
Oh man. I mean, in all likelihood, you probably spend a second or early third round pick on Mahomes. So I'd probably lean Mahomes just with coming into the season. He was 1 or 2 on the quarterback rankings.
Yeah.
Rodgers has a history of beating up divisional opponents, but they also last week may have been an anomaly. They may have attacked that Vikings defense knowing that they struggled in the secondary. Yep. And we see them go back to their 2019 game plan, which is they want to pound the rock, pound, run. And then we see Rodgers put up 1 touchdown and 240. So
yeah,
I'm going Mahomes here.
Yeah, I'm going Mahomes. I'm writing. If I have Mahomes, I'm playing Mahomes. Like he is so good. That team's actually more productive on the road, scores more points. And if the Chargers can keep it interesting, then maybe he's able to throw a little bit more. I am curious. It feels like we've a month since we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the opener against the Texans, but
right.
It feels like it's been forever, but now, we go into this game. So I'm really curious to see what he looks like in this game, how much he's involved, what their goal line packages look like. There's a lot going on in that spot. I'm really interested in. We got another question. DJ Moore, obviously at Tampa Bay, or Terry McLaurin at Arizona.
Man, that one's tough. I'd probably go DJ Moore.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Man, I'm going Scary Terry. I think that game is a lot more of a go back and forth. I think McLaurin looks a lot better this week. I think Haskins is going to throw and on the road in Arizona. I think that the Tampa game. The Carolina offense, I want to see how. I think there's so many different options where you could throw the ball. Like we mentioned, there's going to be a lot more McCaffrey this week. I think McLaurin's basically outside of Gibson going to be pelted with targets. I think he could have a 7 to 10 target type game. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the secondary against him. If they shadow him, if they kind of move Patrick Peterson around, how that's going to work. But
that's kind of what I was going to say. I would only be worried if Arizona decided to shadow McLaurin with Patrick Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the only reason why. Whereas Tampa Bay, I don't think they would have the ability to do that with all of the options and the way that Carolina is going to attack them with 3 wide receiver sets pretty much the entirety of the game. So I think that's why I lean more here.
Yeah, and it being full PPR, I think you're right. I think we need to go DJ Moore. I love McLaurin. I think he has a good game, and I'm playing him where I have him. But between the two, I think DJ Moore is the correct answer. All right, Brian. We're rapidly approaching 9:15. Is there anything else you want to hit on before we jump off and get ready for another week of football?
So I just want to re-hit on my long-standing belief that the Chargers will be able to keep this game close against the Chiefs. Everyone thinks I'm absolutely insane, but I think Tyrod Taylor is able to hit Mike Williams a couple times deep down the field. I think this is a sneaky play if you wanted to bet Chargers plus the points first quarter in this game, because I think their defense is able to stymie Kansas City early before Kansas City's able to put points on the board. I think there's an ability to make money here. I think we see Mike Williams put up his best performance since 2018 in this game. I'm interested to see what the Chargers defense is able to do, even without Derwin James against Mahomes, even though we both like Mahomes this week. But I think this is another one of those games where it's closer than what the line is saying.
Yeah, I like the first quarter idea. Like, that's a good, like, if you want to attack this game. But I feel like this could be a game where it's like kind of slow, and the Chargers have like an 8-minute drive in the first quarter and kill a lot of clock. And then in the second quarter, Mahomes throws 3 touchdowns and the game's over. I feel
hey, that would still hit.
Absolutely. That's why I said I'm 100% with you. But yeah, no, I think the Chiefs this Chiefs offense, like we saw what they did to Houston. There's like, they have, as long as they're healthy and they're putting these pieces together, and if they're going to get what they got out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I can't see them struggling.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah,
Cam Newton or Tom Brady? Is it now? Okay, this for me is 100% dependent on the scoring. If it's 6 points per passing touchdown, I'm probably going Tom Brady. But if it's the standard in ESPN and a lot of other leagues where it's 4 points, I'm going Cam Newton with his ability to be able to throw the ball and his running ability.
I'm going with Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. I think he throws a lot more. Cam had a nice week 1. I have, like, I told you I have a little pessimism in regards to Russell Wilson. I think this game is low scoring. I think it's a lot of running. I think, Seattle and New England have good secondaries. They run the ball a lot. It's kind of like a 17-13, grinded out, maybe 24-13, something like that. But yeah, no, if you're looking for upside, it's Tom Brady. And I could see him, throwing for 3 touchdowns and having a nice homecoming. Evan Ingram or Hayden Hurst?
Oh, come on. That's the simplest thing of all time. Hayden Hurst Helmsley is going to be putting the pedigree on that Cowboys depleted linebacker crew this week. Yeah,
no, like I said, I like the Giants. I think Daniel Jones has a much better game, but yeah, the Cowboys' inability to keep linebackers healthy is something that has lasted a long time. I think Hayden Hurst has a big game here, even though he has more people. But like, the return of Golden Tate should get in the way of Evan Ingram. But Hayden Hurst, yeah, I'm 100% with you there.
Yeah, I think another important aspect to that Hayden Hurst selection is the fact that Anthony Brown is going to be out for the Cowboys. He got placed on IR. That means Jordan Lewis is thrust into a starting role for them. And, the Falcons play 3 wide receiver sets. I think it was something like 82% of their snaps last week. And with Hayden Hurst playing on something like 88% of all the offensive snaps, he ran the most routes of any tight end last week. I think he has a huge game this week going up against Jalen Smith, who really struggles covering tight ends. I think Hayden Hurst finishes as the tight end 1 this week. There we go. There's my bold statement. Boom! You heard it here first.
Non-PPR: Keenan Allen, Corey Davis, Adrian Peterson. For me, it's pretty easy, but I'm curious where your head's at.
Non-PPR?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm going old man AP with that one.
Ooh.
Give me the touchdown upside.
Gross. Corey Davis is the correct answer.
Derrick Henry is going to be the entire Titans offense today.
No AJ Brown this week. I think Corey Davis gets pelted with targets once again. I do agree. But even last week where Derrick Henry saw 31 carries, Ryan Tannehill threw it over 40 times. I don't think he throws it that much, but I think it's 25, and I think Corey Davis is a big benefactor, finds the end zone, has a big week, and kind of is the wide receiver 1 in that offense. I'm not playing Adrian Peterson. If Matt Patricia plays him, like, I don't know what to do. Like, Carry-on's clearly the odd man out. We'll see what DeAndre Swift snap share looks like, but
I was just going to say, I think DeAndre Swift fits into the Antonio Gibson mold right now, that if you can make a pre-game day trade right now for him on the cheap, I'm doing that immediately because there's no way Detroit's going to be able to run the ball like that throughout the entire season, and they're going to have to give it to the more athletic guy in Swift, who has clearly overtaken Carryon as the preferred option back there.
Like, I don't understand how it's 2020 and we're going to be watching Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson and like these guys still run out there. But yeah, if AP is going to get 17 to 20 touches, like, I mean, he's clearly the answer, but
hey man, AP is the GOAT. He's the GOAT of GOATs at running back.
Is he though? He's not. You think he's better than Barry Sanders? You think he's better than LaDainian Tomlinson?
Come on, why do we always gotta bring up the old guy, the retired?
We're talking about the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
If we're talking about the recent plays of running backs over the last 15 years, who else was able to produce the amount of stuff that AP was?
Frank Gore.
Come on.
Hall of Famer Frank Gore.
Well, Frank Gore is just because longevity.
Okay. All right, Brian. I think this is a good spot. If we have any more questions, there we go. There's some AP love right there. You know it all day, baby. All day. All right, for Brian Twining, if you're enjoying what we're doing, make sure you hit thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the show. We'll be back on Monday night to break down the waiver wire, get you guys set for attacking that ahead of week 3. We'll be back on Friday to look ahead to the week 3 slate, give you some betting previews, give you some fantasy targets we really like. And then obviously every Sunday morning, we're here starting at 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific, to answer all of your start-sit questions and get you set for another slate of games. Brian, we're off and running. Enjoy week 2, and I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you Monday.
All right, peace out, everyone. Good luck.
Good luck.